So let's go through the projects. So there are not much anything. It depends on the preferences or the features that we have enabled. What should be the percentage complete denominator? I'll not go into the detail of this because a project is a very vast topic. So whether it should be plan time or actual time, that can be defined. Going ahead, time and expenses. Whether we want to have projects only for time and expense entry, we can check this checkbox. Whether we want to notify the supervisor, so whenever any expense report is generated or entered by a particular user, whether we want to automatically notify that particular supervisor that an expense report has been generated, you can check this checkbox, so the email will be sent accordingly. So time tracking, these are also mostly related to the time tracking and project, you can say project management. So whether any approvals are required on the time records or not, or advanced approvals on the time records, all that can be defined here under the time tracking. Similarly, going ahead, I suggest you go through all these things. These features will vary a lot depending on the features that you have enabled. So I'll not go into the detail of this. In case if you want to go through, just go through it, and in case if you need any help from me, you can let me know. But these are not, these preferences we generally don't change much. They are by default set by NetSuite as it is. We don't change those much. Okay.
Okay.
Similarly, whether the expenses should be billable to the client or not, or whether item billables billable by default. So whenever we enter any expenses, whether we want that to get invoiced to the customer or not, can be defined here depending on the preferences that we set. Whether we want to combine detailed items on expense reports, so whether we want to combine those detailed items or not, or the memos that we have entered on the expense reports should be copied on the invoices or not. So whenever an invoice is generated to the customer, those memos should be invoiced or shown or not. So whether there should be more warning message for taxable expense lines without receipt. So in case if we have any entered any expense reports with taxes, but we have not entered the receipt, whether it should show us the warning or not. Whether non-reimbursable expenses should be allowed on the expense report or not, that can be defined here. Similarly, what should be the foreign amount exchange rate, whether that should be exchange rate dependent on the exchange rate or on the base amount, can be defined here. Going ahead, approval routing. So here it defines what are the transactions for which the approval matrix can be set. Okay, but in case, or means if we don't check these check boxes, NetSuite standard approval routing is used. Okay, but in case if we don't want to use the standard approval routing of NetSuite, we can check this checkbox, and we can, means if we have checked this checkbox, we can define the workflow, or we can define the approval matrix, how the approval should happen. If I don't want the standard NetSuite approval routing, I can check this checkbox and I can define my own approval matrix as required. So I can have the approval matrix defined for expense reports. So if I've unchecked here, and depending on the, so if I see here on the sales order, I have defined that the approval, you can see the status should be pending approval. If it is pending approval and I have not checked the checkbox for you can say sales orders or any other transactions here, then by default standard approval matrix will be into picture. In case if I have checked these checkboxes, then I can define my own approval matrix. Similarly, for in case if I want the approvals on the invoices, that should be as per my approval matrix, I can check these checkboxes and save it accordingly. Any questions, any queries?
Workflow means you will create custom workflow for it, or
Right.
okay.
So we have one session for workflows as well. So I'll show you how the workflows are there, how you can create, how the actions can be set. Okay.
Okay.
You can do the workflow via, means you can do the approval matrix via script, or you can do it via workflow. Workflow can be done on the UI. You don't need any script for any, means in case if you use a workflow. Okay.
Okay.
So here you have checked this checkbox. So for purchase orders and for requisitions, I will use my own approval matrix and I'll not use the NetSuite standard approval matrix for these two transactions. Okay. So this was something related to the accounting preferences.